All right, everybody. My name is Hayden Green. I am a photographer and based out of Brooklyn, New York. And I want to thank you all for tuning in for our workshop on photography. This is everything that you need to know about doing photography, and whether it's a hobby, whether you want to get into a brand new line of work, or if you are just looking for a side hustle, or you just want your Instagram page just to look a little bit better. I'm here for you. All right. So I am a photographer that taught himself everything that he knows. And so you can check out my Instagram. You can check out the Instagram page when this is all said and done. You can look through that and see if any of that stuff proves that I know what I'm doing. But I think I do. And if I can teach myself, I can teach you, and then you can teach yourself even more stuff and take leaps and bounds. All right. So we're going to do everything that we're going to go through all of the motions, right? I teach in the same way that the Cliff Huxtable used to teach on the Cosby Show. I remember the episode when I think one of the kids wanted to learn how to play a band, and they wanted to go just straight into the drumming and stuff like that. And he was like, "No, you have to go boom bap, boom bap, boom bap." And that's how I approach photography. If you know everything about the basics of it, then when it comes down to actually doing more advanced stuff, you'll already have the groundwork laid and you'll know what rules to break. But you can't break a rule if you don't know what the rule is and why the rule exists, right? So that's how we're basing it. Today, we're going to talk about the basics of cameras, right? Why? Everybody has a camera. I know what a camera is. Yes, but do you know what is happening inside the camera when you say shutter speed? Do you know what happens when you press the shutter release, right? If you do, then as a camera, if the camera malfunctions, you know how to fix it. If you, when you want to change some of the settings, you know how to change it. So we're going to go through all of that stuff. So this is a free workshop. We'll be doing it every Saturday. This one, we're going to play it like that first spades hand. You know when you're playing spades and you play the first hand out just to see who gets what books and then you bid the next hand? Well, if this takes us an hour to get through the first session, then these will be hourly sessions. If it's only a half an hour, then these will be 30-minute sessions, right? So we're going to play it out there. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to bring in a little bit of sass. We're going to bring in my co-hosts here. Come on in here, co-host. This is Clark. Clark is going to be helping me out with a lot of the stuff. So I'll be talking about stuff. I'll ask Clark if she understands. And Clark, what I want you to do is pay attention to what people are saying here. So if somebody asks me a question, make sure that, and I didn't see it, make sure you tell me about it. Is that cool? Mm-hmm. All right. Say hi, Clark.
Hi.
So you're supposed to say, hi, Clark. Say hi, Clark.
Hi, Clark.
Right. So old before you get it. All right. So let's start talking cameras. Let's get right in it. And again, this is a free workshop. And but we do have a tip jar. If you want to go to my Cash App, it is $ Hayden M Green. So that's HAYDEN, M as in Michael, GREENE. And if you want to leave a tip because you're getting good tips, I wouldn't be mad at you. All right. So let's get started. What is a camera? So a camera is a simple device. So I know when we think about cameras, we think about these things, right? So we think about something that looks like this, right? So we think about like really complicated devices, but a camera is a really simple thing. A camera is simply a device that takes an image and projects it onto a film or a receptor somewhere, right? And so the first cameras were called pinhole cameras or camera obscuras. And what they did was they would take an image, they would create this box that was completely black, completely dark, right? And they would put some film in the back of it. Well, even the first camera obscura didn't have any film. What it did was it created a darkness, and sometimes it was a room and sometimes it was a box, and they would punch a hole in the front, and then the light coming from whatever was on the other side of the camera would come through here, right through that hole, and then project onto the back wall. And whatever was in front of the camera would be projected onto the back upside down, right? And then film got invented, and I'm not going to go into the nitty gritty of how film got invented, what a film is. And so they pinned the post. I have no idea what that means. Don't know what that means. Pin it. How? I'm going to learn how to do this one of these days. I'm just going live, and hopefully this makes sense. So one of the things that what then happened was that they would put film on, my Cash App. Oh, you're right. I should put that somewhere else, right? I don't know how to do that either. Let's see if we pull it up over here. And while we're doing that, well, I'll keep mentioning it, but I don't want to interrupt. I want y'all to get the information because some of y'all are probably in here for 10 minutes. So started adding film, and so the image that was on this side would project onto the back of the camera, right? And so then they would take the film out, and then they would process the film, and that's how you would get a picture. And it was this big, laborious problem, right? So cameras were huge, like they were just these giant things, right? From the size of your head, right, all the way. No, not the size of your head. All right.
My head's too big.
Your head's too big? No, they were huge. They were really, like I said, the first camera obscura was the size of a room. It was the actual size of a room. So they were huge. And then there's this guy that came along. His name is Kodak, and he created one of the first handheld cameras. And that revolutionized everything. What are we reaching for? The Kodak camera? I'll show that in a second. So Kodak cameras revolutionized everything, and it made film accessible and cameras accessible to people. And so why this is important, because we'll start to get into things that are called ISOs and film rate and all the rest of that stuff. And that has to do with film cameras, handheld film cameras. And so there were 110 cameras, 35 millimeter cameras, large format cameras, 8 millimeter. So there were all of these different types of cameras, and they were all personal. So now this really expanded the realm of photography to everybody. Who do you think had access to photography before Kodak? What type of people? Rich people, right? So only rich people had photographs, which is why you look at some of the daguerreotypes and all of these photographs back in the days. They're of rich people. All these portraitures are of rich people, landowners, and things like that. So it's it opened this up. Photography, Kodak opened this up to all of these different people. And then as time went on, we came across digital, digital was invented. And I'll be the first to say that I was not a fan of digital. I was like, what is this new thing, right? So digital came along. And so what digital simply means is that instead of a film in the back of the camera, right? What do we have? We have what's called a sensor. Say sensor. Sensor, right? And so what this means is that instead of having to roll through the film and roll through all these different rolls of film, you could now expose the back of the sensor as many times as you wanted, right? And then that got saved to a digital format. And like I said, I was a latecomer to digital, but digital has been around for many years now, and that revolutionized the way that we look at cameras. And so that then opened up the realm of this kind of guy. So this is actually Clark's first camera. This was one of my first cameras. Remember this camera? All right. So we want to keep this here. So hold it up. So this camera is one of your basic fixed lens cameras, right? So this lens doesn't come off. Hold it up nice and big there. So this lens doesn't come off. It's standard. The zoom is internal. Nothing moves outside of here. And most of the parts, most of the stuff that you do with is in here. The flash is included. So that's an internal flash. And there are not many things that you can change in here. There are, if you can see that, there we go. There are some adaptations that you can do, and you'll see a little bit more about this dial, but we'll talk about that in a second. So this was one of the first types of cameras that people started getting. There are also things, if people remember, the Instamatic cameras, so the Polaroids where you shake it like a Polaroid. And so that becomes a standard. So people now have these little cameras that put into their pockets. But the professional level cameras are these types of cameras, right? This is what is called a DSLR. You know what DSLR stands for? No? All right. So DSLR. Digital. Yeah. Digital? Yeah. So DSLR stands for Digital Single Lens Reflex Camera. Okay?
Wouldn't it be
DSLR? Digital Single Lens Reflex Camera.
Then wouldn't it be DLSRC?
No, it's a DSLR camera. All right? So DSLR cameras are those cameras that you most see on that professionals use. You can add different lenses to them. It's one of my favorite fisheye lenses. I love this lens. It's a Rokinon. And so these cameras are called reflex cameras because, you see that right there? That is the shutter opening and closing and the mirror flipping up. So that reflex is the reflex of that shutter opening back and forth. And it's a single lens because there used to be dual lens cameras. And if I was doing this outside of Corona, am I boring you? No. I'm boring her. I'm trying to entertain a 11-year-old, 10, almost 11 years old. She'll be 11 a little bit later. So if I was back at my office, I could show you a dual lens camera, which had one lens that you look through, and then another lens that the image actually came through. But this is a stupid quarantine, right? So, but this is a single lens, which means that the image that you are seeing through the lens is the same image that is being exposed onto the back of the camera. It's the same lens that you're using. All right.
It's called a fisheye.
And I'll talk about that in a few. We'll get to that in one of the later. That's a very good question. Also, if you have any questions about what we're talking about, please add them right here, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. All right. And then we're now at a place where we are starting to do these things. These are called mirrorless cameras, right? So if you can see that, and these are really flat, right? Really sleek, right? And these also take lenses. You can put these lenses right on here. Hold that up so that people can see it. And you can put lenses right on here as well. And so you can expand it as well. But instead of that mirror that I told you that flapped up and down that you saw when I pressed the shutter, that has no mirror. Right? And so the image that you see is a digital representation of what's coming through the sensor. So the image comes in and it hits the sensor, and then that image is digitally transferred to what the image is in the back here. So your viewfinder, right? So you're not seeing a real version of what you're seeing. You're seeing a digital version of what the lens is seeing. And so those are the different types of cameras. And so one of the reasons that I want to go through that is that there are a bunch of deals, right? That you can go to Costco or BJ's and you can get a bunch of these you can get these cameras for not too expensive prices, right? So I'm a Canon guy, so I'm going to talk about Canon and Rebel and stuff like that. And so if you are interested, you can go out and get yourself a relatively... Huh?
Can't go.
Well, you can't go now. Well, yeah, you can. BJ's is still open. So you can go BJ's and buy a camera set. You want to go BJ's and buy a camera set? She just wants to get out the house. All right. So you can go and you can get these things. And the cameras are versions, scaled down versions of, say, this professional camera. And so what has happened is that people go out and Uncle Louis goes out and buys himself a whole camera set and says to whoever is like, hey, listen, can I shoot your wedding? And I'm like, sure, right? Because Uncle Louis has left the camera on automatic, right? Which means that the camera is doing all the work. And there are places that make sense. But what I'm here to do is the thing that we're going to do today is we're going to go through the main controls of all of the cameras. Okay? So, actually, Clark, can you do me a favor? On the table upstairs, there is a piece of paper that has all of these that has two dials that look just like this. Can you run and get them for me? All right, now that I have you to myself. All right, so each main camera has a set of dials that adjust what you want to do with the camera. You will hear me talk about the thing called the Holy Trinity, and that is one of the things that we are going to be focusing on over the next couple of weeks. We'll take out each one of the Holy Trinities and break it out and try to figure out exactly how we're going to do that and what that means. And so each one of these dials, and if you can see that right here, each one of these dials does something, but most people just leave it on that little green dial right there. So you see that green dial? That green dial is automatic, right? And so that green dial is automatic. And so we have here a printout. Thank you, Clark. Got a printout of the dials. And so what I want to do, I want to go through this dial with you, and it'll help you to understand exactly what your camera is trying to do. Okay? So here is my Canon. This is a picture of a kind of a Canon, a version of the Canon, right? And so here's the green dial right here. So this is automatic. This is where we're trying to get you off of. Here's the thing. I'm not saying that automatic is bad, because there are times that automatic is necessary. Automatic is something that you may want in order just to get the shot. I use automatic sometimes. What I will do is I will come in, I'll take a shot. If I don't know exactly how I want to meter the shot or what settings I want to hit, I'll hit automatic and see what the camera is seeing and what the camera wants to talk about. And then I'll take some of that information and then I'll go to manual, right? So automatic is, not completely bad, but if you're trying to do some really interesting stuff, you're going to need to take it off of automatic. So and also, like for instance, if you've got a professional camera and you're just out with your family and you're just taking pictures and you're hanging out in the park or something along those lines, sometimes it's convenient just to have it on automatic, right? You don't want to think about it, right? You're just taking pictures of your family. So it's really cool to have the automatic setting here. So this is not one of those things where it's like poo-poo on automatic. I'm here if you want to get past the automatic, right? If you want to do different things, then how do you do that, right? So, all right, where are we at? Okay. So the first thing that you'll see on here is the letter P. Right? And I have a Canon, and then I have a Nikon, what Nikons look like. And so it's the same thing over here. So you have automatic here for the Canon, and then you have, so Canon just puts a green bar, a green rectangle, sorry. Nikon actually says the word, thank you, Clark. Nikon actually says the word auto on the back here, right? Yep. And so right there, see? It says it. You do see it? It is tiny. You can actually look at it on here. Okay? So over here, the next thing that you'll see is the P, and so also the P on Nikon. So the P stands for program. And it can get a little bit confusing because program and manual seem like it's doing the same thing, right? You're adding all of these different information. So program allows you to adjust the aperture and the shutter speed and then it sets for you the ISO, or it sets where your ISO needs to be. So let's take one step back. The Holy Trinity. The Holy Trinity is called that because there are three things that cameras tend to use in order to adjust the light that's coming in. So you have something that's called aperture, and then you have ISO, and then you have the shutter speed, right? And we're going to deal with each one of those things in a subsequent session. So we'll deal with shutter speed in one session, we'll deal with aperture in another session, and then we'll deal with ISO in another session. But that's the Holy Trinity, right? And so your camera is always trying to figure out what is the balance between those three. And so a lot of times you see it represented as a triangle. I'm trying not to do the delta symbol here. It's represented as a triangle. All right. So that's the main thing. So P allows you to adjust your shutter speed and your aperture, and it will set the ISO for you. The next thing you have here on a Canon, let's see if you can see that, on a Canon is TV. And over here on Nikon, it's an S, right? And so that is your dial. So now we're getting into semi-automation, right? And so SCN. So that's a different, that's scene. So the rest of it, on this small camera, you'd have to go into the menu to find what it is that I'm talking about. And that's actually a good point. Thank you very much, Clark. I'll tell you, one of the things about the new phones that we have is that, all I have is a phone. All I have is an iPhone. Even in your iPhones, even in your Android phones, you can make these adjustments, right? You can take once you open up the camera and you hit the focus button, not the focus button, the function button. If you add the function button, there are places where you can do professional, and it allows you to access all of the different things, right? And I'm going to get back to semi-automation in 2 seconds. I'm coming right back to it. Thank you for that, Yemi. So it allows you to adjust all of these things inside of the camera. So you're able to adjust the aperture, you're able to adjust the shutter speed, and you're able to adjust the ISO inside of your phone. So there is a pro settings, or you go into the actual settings, you can find all of the stuff right side inside of your cameras. So if your phones. So make sure you check that out. If you don't know how to do it, there are tutorials, and any camera comes with a lot of that information. All right, so semi-automation. So automatic is, like I showed you, the auto and the green bar, but semi-automatic means that you're telling the camera, I'm going to set this particular one of the functions, right? I'm going to set that, and then you're telling the camera, based on what I tell you to set this thing at, you figure out all the rest of the settings, all right? So the first one that I want to talk about is our shutter, right? So on Canons, it says TV, time value, and on Nikons, it says S for shutter. I'm a Canon guy, but I don't know why they picked that. Anyway, so shutter speed priority simply means that you say, I want it to be 60th, 1/60th of a second, or I want it to be 1/100th or 1/200th of a second, right? That's the shutter speed that I want. Do not change the shutter speed. The camera will then say, okay, so you want that to be your shutter speed. I will set the aperture and the ISO so that you get a clean and well-lit picture, right? That's what semi-automation means. That's what the priority means. So that's putting it in shutter priority says, I want it to be this, and so that you can set all the rest of the stuff. Why do you need that? Let's say you are at a basketball game, right? And the lighting keeps on changing, and sometimes they have flashes because somebody scored, or, there's a lot of lighting stuff going on. But you know that the picture, the action is really, really, really fast. So you want to keep your shutter speed at 1/200th of a second. So, 1/200th of a second. So 200 on the dial. It actually says 200. So you can go into shutter priority and leave it at 200. And so you know that no matter what, your camera's going to be fast enough to catch the action, and it'll be well lit because the camera's taking care of all of the other calculations for you, right? So again, it's a helpful tool for those of you who are interested in making sure that you get the right picture, and you don't want to go fully automatic. All right, so that's shutter priority. The next thing you got is aperture priority, and it's AV on a camera, on a Canon, and A on a Nikon. And I think I've also got my Sony here. Sony, there are no dials on it because they try to make it as sling, as sleek as possible. You have to go in. but it does, you are able to go in and adjust it, and those are available inside the Sony as well. What is an aperture priority? Aperture priority means that you are setting what the aperture value is, and the camera figures out everything else for you, right? So it changes the shutter and it changes the ISO. So if if you're trying to do pictures that have a blurry background, those, very shishi-foo-foo pictures where it's like you're in focus and everything in the background is all blurry, then you can do that, and you can set it at aperture priority, and you know that your aperture will stay the same no matter where you take the camera. And if you move in and out of a lighting situation, the camera will make the adjustments. It'll make the shutter speed adjustments, and it'll make the ISO adjustments, right? And it's very, very it's very helpful if you are trying to just focus on what it is that you're taking a picture of, as opposed to going full manual, trying to figure out, well, what is my aperture? And sometimes you want to do that, but sometimes this is also very helpful. And so that's where we are on the priority mode. So semi-automated modes are your aperture priority, your shutter priority, and your program mode, right? And then we get to the big M. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. The big M. Manual. I saw a post or a shirt that said, everybody wants to be a photographer until this, and it showed the manual mode. Manual mode means that you are in control of everything, right? It means that there is all the functions, everything that's happening in the camera happens because you said so, right? So the aperture is yours to set. The ISO is yours to set, and the shutter speed is yours to set. And why is this important? Well, if you are worth your salt as a photographer, and I will get you there, right? You will know that if my picture is too dark, I need to either change the ISO, the aperture, or the shutter speed. But knowing which one to change and being able to change it, right, means that you need to have that ability to have the control of all of those different things. And so it may be that I am in a situation where I cannot lower my shutter speed anymore because I'll get handshake, and we'll talk about handshake when we do shutter speed. But I might get a different handshake for if I lower my shutter speed. So then I can only adjust my aperture, right? But if I adjust my aperture, maybe things in the background might be too blurry. So maybe I adjust my ISO. But in adjusting your ISO, it means that you may have grain, right? And we'll talk about all of those things in future sessions, right? So, but manual allows you to adjust all of those different things. And so you may be able to drop your shutter speed a little bit, raise your ISO, or lower your ISO depending on what it is you're trying to do, and adjust your aperture. And manual allows you to do all of that on the fly, right? It allows you to have access and control over all of those things without the camera dictating what should be what. Okay. Yenny says, what AV function is AV a function good for still shots like jewelry? Good. That's a great question. If you are doing still shots, and so, and this is the reason why this is a good question is most of your priority settings, so aperture priority, shutter priority, in my estimation, in my time, the only time that I use them is when things are constantly changing, right? So if you're at a sporting event, if you're out in a park, or you're at a concert, or you are moving, right? Things happen really, really quickly, and if you're in manual, sometimes you're not fast enough to make those changes, and so it helps to automate one or two of the functions, right? But if you're doing still shots, if you have like it's lit and there are and there's a box and you're doing it for maybe a product shoot or something along those lines, stay in manual, right? Just because you can make those adjustments. The environment's not changing, right? Not unless you are shooting a model that's moving, right? So like, let's say your jewelry is on the wrist of and I know you do a lot of bracelets. The wrist is on a model, and you want the model to do this because you want to catch the hair in the background. But you need to catch this jewelry as it's moving, right? So you may want to be on shutter priority so that on a fast shutter rate so that you catch it as it moves by, and it's a crisp image because you want people to see the details of the jewelry. If you're sitting the jewelry in a box and it's not moving and none of the lighting is changing, stay in manual. You'll have perfect control. You'll be able to say, all right, that was a little bit too light. That was a little bit too dark, and you can make the adjustments on the fly. Now, if you're in aperture priority because you want it to be sharp all the way through, or you want to keep the aperture at a particular thing, the camera might pick up something that you're not seeing, like the glint off of. And this happens a lot. Like, for instance, if you have a shiny bauble and the light hits it in a particular way and the camera picks up on that, if you're in aperture priority, the camera's going to be like, oh, there's too much light coming in, and it will change all of the rest of the stuff. So you may get a darker image than the one that you were looking for, right? But if you're in manual, you can stay where you need to be, and that glint that comes off of one of the beads or something like that will show up as a highlight or show up as a sparkle, right? Whereas it won't affect the entire image. I hope that answered your question. All right. The last thing that I want to talk about is the focus button. And let's see if I can see this. Okay, can't focus unless you have a lens. So I'm going to put a lens in here. All right. Okay. So focus buttons. There we go. All right, you can't see it on this one because so when you are focusing, there are a number of different ways to focus. Oh yeah, here you go. All right. So if you can see in here, it's a little dot, right? And there are a number of ways that you can focus a camera. So if you have a DSLR or if you have a mirrorless camera, and some of the handheld cameras, the fixed lens cameras also have movable focal points. So there are 3 different ways that you can change your focal points. Not the actual point. That's also something you can change, but the type of way that the camera is focusing. There is spot focus, right? And spot focus means that pick a point on the subject, focus only on that subject, and everything else we're going to take information only from that one point. We're going to ignore everything else that's around it, right? So why is light is coming in and how to make adjustments, even if you're on manual, right? And so when you say this is the focal point that I want, then you can have a little bit more control. So maybe you want to focus back here, right? Or you want to focus up here, but this is still a spot focus. And then there is oh my God, I just lost the name of it. But it gives you a little bit more of a range, right? So instead of just this, it's going to take this area, and what it's going to do is take the average of this area right here. Right? It's going to take the average of this area. And that will give you a little bit more control because, let's say, for instance, if you're looking at my nose, right now my nose is really, really bright. If I were to use a spot focus and say that this is the place that I'm going to focus on, the camera's going to think that this is a really bright photo and it's going to make adjustments according to that. Or you're going to have to adjust what the camera is seeing in order to accommodate this bright photo. However, if you then take this area here, it now says, all right, I'm gonna take the average of this darker area here and this bright area here, and I'm gonna come up with a different idea. I'm gonna come up with a different number. And then there is the metered focus, which takes the whole scene and it says, this is the average for this whole scene. It's kind of bright here, kind of dark here, but I think that this is what the settings are. And so that's important because if you are using any of the priority modes, it will make adjustments according to that kind of lighting. It'll also, if you are looking at, if you're in manual mode and you think that by my calculations, it should be these numbers for aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, and then you take the picture, the camera will make those determinations, what goes on to the sensor by how it is metered, right? Am I taking the whole scene or am I just using spot on one place? So that's important. And also on most cameras, you can find it on this one. So on the camera, on a Canon, it's right up here. It goes to AF, and if you move that around, you can move it from spot to the whole scene. A Nikon is the exact same thing. Sony, you have to go into the menu, but you can always look in your actual manual and find out exactly where the different metering for focus is. Now, you also then have access of moving the focal point, right? Now, why is that important? So if I have a low priority, a low aperture picture, right? And I say, I want the focus point to be right here on my nose, right? Almost missed my nose. Did you see that? That was really bad. All right. So I want the focus point to be on my nose. If I have a low aperture, right, which means that there is a short range of focus, meaning that the focus is only that big, I may have this focused, and then this, by the time I get to my eye and my ear is out of focus, right? Yes, I knew if anybody was going to comment on it, it was going to be the photo of mommy. Anyway, so this will be out of focus, right? But what if I'm trying to do a stylistic image of my ear, right? I can change where I want my focal point. So I can either move the camera so that the focal point is over here, or I can go into the camera and move where the focal point is. So you have, and I know this is weird, but you will see there are 9 dots, right? And some cameras have like 64 dots. And so you can move the focal point from here to here to here. You can move it around so it is wherever you want it to be. If I wanted to keep the person in the center of the image, and I just wanted this focal point to be here, I would leave it here. But if I wanted it to be all the way over here, I can leave the camera where it is and change the focal point so that it's back here on my ear. So the subject stays in the center and the focal point is at the ear, but now this part of you is out of focus, but the ear is nice and sharp. Right. And so that's one of the things that you want to do with your focal points, and one of the things that you want to try to achieve with your focal points. Or say, for instance, you're doing a portrait picture and you've turned your camera this way, right? And normally, let's say your focal point is nice at the top, right? But when you turn the camera this way, now the focal point is over here, right? And you want it to be up here, so you can switch your focal point until it comes up to the top, right? And so that is a functionality of all cameras, and you can find them anywhere on. You can find it in your actual in your actual manual how you move your focal. Each camera does a different thing. So I think we're gonna round that out right there. All right. Again, I hope some of this stuff was interesting. I hope some of this stuff was helpful. Clark, you want to come in and say goodbye? All right, Clark's going to come in and say goodbye. In the meantime, there's a tip jar. You want to go to my Cash App? It's $ Hayden M Green. That's HAYDEN M as in Michael GREENE. And it'll help feed this one over here.
6 feet apart. 6 feet. Ow!
It'll help to feed this one over here because she eats a lot.
You almost snapped my thumb.
Yes, that's fine. So this one eats a lot, so the tip jar will help with this one. All right.
Hayden eats more.
Hayden does eat more. Not this Hayden, the other Hayden.
One.
All right. Say goodbye, Clark.
Bye.
All right. So we will be back here. This was 45
See?
This was 45 minutes. And we'll probably keep it to around 45 minutes next Saturday as well. Next Saturday, we are going to be talking about shutter speed. So if you've ever wondered why some of your images come out blurry or some of them come out sharp, so shutter speed might be the thing that you have to think about. And so we will talk about tripods. We will talk about handshake. We'll talk about some good ways to hold your camera in order to be more steady. We're going to be talking about all of those different things. So shutter speed is next week, Saturday at 5 o'clock. I hope you come, and you still got questions. All right. Yes. Yenny, I keep on calling you Yemi. Yenny, send me all the questions that you have, and we'll try to get them answered. And so, but also some of the stuff that you may be asking, we'll talk about in the future sessions. So you have to come back, right? So this was the basics, right? So when I say adjust your shutter speed, or go into aperture priority, or go into shutter priority, or change your focal point, now you know what I'm talking about, right? That's the basis for what we're going to the conversations that we'll be having in the future. And I hope, again, like I said, this was helpful. I had fun doing it. I will see you next week, and stay safe, stay healthy, and stay bright. And hopefully all your pictures come out in focus. See y'all later.